Nowadays, everyone knows Star Wars, from the elderly to children. But before creating that saga, director George Lucas made a science fiction film containing certain elements he would later incorporate into his story, set in a galaxy far, far away. The film takes place in a dystopian future where sexual relations and reproduction are completely forbidden for society. As a result, showing emotions and the very idea of starting a family are taboo. To ensure citizens' cooperation and make them carry out their assigned roles, the government forces them to take drugs that control their minds and keep them living underground. Instead of names, people use codes made up of 3 letters, called a prefix, and 4 numbers, which appear on their identification cards. Workers wear identical white uniforms and have shaved heads to symbolize uniformity, just like the android police, who dress in black. It's a bleak and depressing world. In that context, we meet THX-1138, who works in a factory producing android police officers. On the other hand, LUH-3417, a woman, works in a control center, monitoring the city and other points of interest to make sure citizens do not break the rules. At that moment, LUH is watching the monitors when she receives an alert about an accident in the Red Sector L, a factory. Suddenly, an explosion hits that entire sector, killing the workers. Yet the voice over the loudspeakers insists that other departments continue with their activities, given there is supposedly no risk of radiation. At the end of their shift, THX and his colleagues are congratulated by the voice on the intercom, since they only lost 195 employees in the last period, a positive number compared to the 242 that were lost in another sector. On his way home, THX stops to pick up a red box from a room and then heads to a confessional. Instead of a priest, there is a screen showing an image of Jesus Christ along with a mechanical voice. Feeling very embarrassed, THX confesses that he forgot to check some things at work earlier. In that world, being forgetful is seen as a serious shortcoming. THX goes on to reveal that the sedatives he has been taking haven't produced the intended effect. Although he does not know that the voice of Jesus Christ is just a tape on a loop, giving everyone the same monotonous responses. When he arrives home, THX finds LUH, his roommate, but decides to ignore her. LUH requests more, a Nerval, a sedative, but her request is denied because she was born by illegal natural birth, and such individuals are not allowed more than 5 units of a Nerval per day. Meanwhile, THX is in a room watching holograms of a naked woman while a machine gives him pleasure, something that apparently only their kind can use. We then see someone switching THX's pills for different ones. That is why he has been feeling so different lately, especially regarding his sudden sexual desire. Shortly afterward, LUH begins to cry in her room, having taken THX's Nerval pills. Both of them start experiencing emotions. The next day, in the confessional, THX vents to the fake Jesus Christ, revealing that he has felt attraction for LUH. But since this emotion is new, he feels a lot of anxiety. At home, THX tries to take his medication, but he faints as soon as he opens the drawer with the pills. An operator watching his apartment asks what is going on over the loudspeakers, but LUH makes it clear that they do not need assistance by covering up the camera. After that, she drags the dizzy THX to his bed. When THX regains consciousness, she admits she was frightened by how suddenly he collapsed and believes she would end up alone. The situation quickly turns romantic. Both confess their feelings for each other and end up having sex, breaking one of their society's most sacred rules. LUH stops for a moment, afraid they might be watched by other cameras. However, THX reassures her that no one can see them. When they finish, LUH warns that if he goes back to taking his sedatives, he will no longer feel the same way about her and might report her for stealing his pills. She proposes that they flee the city after he finishes his shift. It's very risky, but they are both fed up with the oppressive regime. Later, however, LUH is informed that she has been assigned new housing, courtesy of CN. THX suspects something. Even so, THX goes to SN's office to avoid problems. Afterward, THX visits SN, who wants him as a new roommate because the previous one died in a work incident. THX doesn't understand this request since roommates are typically assigned by a computer, not by people. The only explanation is that SEN modified the program, a violation of the rules. SN then says that he spoke with LUH earlier, and both agreed that changing roommates was for the best. He continues to argue that, based on THX's history, they would make great roommates. THX leaves, claiming he feels nauseous. The next day, SEN shows up at THX's workplace. THX scolds him for entering that area, but once again SN has manipulated a computer so that the system lets him through. Not only that, but SN has also assigned LUH to a distant sector so she cannot return to THX. Annoyed, the protagonist leaves to file a report about SN's violations in a designated box. Back at his job, but this time with no drugs in his system, THX struggles to assemble an android's head, and his co-workers notice something is off. The control center tries to block THX's mind to make him finish the job, but that only worsens the situation, causing a mishap in the android's chamber. The other employees evacuate, fearing a possible explosion, something that seems quite common that week. In an attempt to prevent a catastrophe, the control center frees THX's mind so he can properly fit the radioactive metal piece, threatening to blow everything to bits. But this doesn't save him from being arrested and taken to trial for his unusual behaviors once they notice he is not taking the correct pills. The judges rule that his condition is incurable because his brain chemicals are unbalanced. He is feeling too many emotions. He is sent to prison, a completely open space, but with nothing in sight except a bright white void. The guards harass THX with metal rods to see how he will react in his next medical exam. In the following test, the protagonist undergoes several medical procedures administered by a machine, from visual exams to the injection of different substances, and of course, he is forced to take a pill. In the end, the diagnosis remains the same: chemical imbalance. Because of that, his left kidney is removed for donation, as he has ceased to be a productive member of society. Back in prison, THX's body is controlled by operators in the control center, placing him in uncomfortable positions against his will as part of their experiments. They even induce convulsions and overload his eardrums. Going a bit too far, they cause THX to pass out. When he wakes up, he finally finds a moment of joy because LUH appears at his side. They embrace warmly, and he asks if the government did anything to harm her. To his surprise, she tells him that she is pregnant. They are going to have a child. Overjoyed by the news, THX starts kissing her, and they end up having sex again in prison, not caring about the consequences. However, in the midst of their passion, android police arrive and try to separate them. THX resists, struggling against one of the robots. The other guard then neutralizes him with an electric charge. Later in the prison's common area, THX meets Sen again. Instead of blaming THX for his arrest, SN mocks their current predicament. Minutes later, an inmate named NSH tries to assault a female prisoner who screams desperately. A guard comes for NSH, but the inmate pushes him and crushes the robot's face. After this small incident, SEN suggests teaming up with THX to escape. THX does not answer right away, and SN is not sure if he will join the plan. They need to convince other prisoners. Suddenly, a new captive is dropped into the prison, an outsider dwarf from the outside world. While a deranged inmate tries to touch the dwarf, THX loses his temper and starts throwing mattresses around. Sen tries to calm him down, but THX hands over his food rations, announcing that he is leaving. Immediately, SN joins THX on his walk, and they find nothing but an endless empty space as they search for a non-existent exit. SN realizes THX wants to get out to find LUH, so SN claims the new prisoner saw her and that she is supposedly fine. THX does not believe that story and keeps going. As they get farther away, the air becomes scarce, so SN makes more and more excuses to go back. Right then, an inmate called SRT appears at a distance, greeting the pair. As he approaches, he asks for food, so SCN hands him his rations. In thanks, SRT reveals that he was also trying to flee and shows them the way to the exit, hidden in a dark corner. As soon as they cross to the other side, they find themselves in a sea of people marching in unison. They lose sight of Sen in the crowd, while SRT and THX manage to find a door leading to a laboratory. There, SRT explains that he used to work as a hologram until he got tired of the same routine and broke the system. They don't have much time to talk because two police officers appear, looking for them. After passing through several hallways of electronic circuits, THX and SRT reach some tunnels and finally shake off their pursuers. They come upon a morgue where they pretend to be corpses when a staff worker arrives to tag each of the deceased by placing a label on their ear. SRT stays quiet for the pinch of the label, but THX lets out a cry and runs away. Meanwhile, SN has escaped the crowd and boarded a train that takes him to a hidden room used by the monks of OMM, the mechanical voice of the Jesus Christ figure. One of the monks notices that Sen does not have an ID card and goes to report him, but Sen knocks him out from behind. Meanwhile, THX and SRT hide from the androids inside a control center. Even though it's risky to stay there, THX looks up LUH's records, finding out she has been consumed and that her name was reassigned to Fetus 66.691, located in a laboratory where humans are artificially created. At the same time, SEN appears in a children's education area, playing with the kids until the police arrest him. Back to THX and SRT. They run into a city parking area and steal 2 vehicles. Neither of them has driven before. Once SRT manages to start his vehicle, he crashes it almost immediately, apparently killing himself on impact. That incident makes it easier for the police to catch him, ending his hopes of freedom. However, THX, luckier than skilled, manages to drive onto the highway. 2 motorcycle-riding androids soon chase him at full speed, but our protagonist is also going quite fast and eventually reaches the city limits. On the way, he collides with some construction scaffolding, forcing him to stop amidst the rubble. One of the androids also crashes dramatically. THX continues on foot through ventilation tunnels, encountering a group of dwarf outsiders and some rabid monkeys from the surface that attack immediately. THX manages to fight them off. Finally, he arrives at a tall ladder that leads to the surface. The androids are ordered to stop their pursuit by the main control center because the cost of his capture has exceeded the initial budget. Thanks to that, THX climbs to the outside world, greeted by a beautiful orange sun, reminiscent of a certain galactic saga.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.